The movie opens inside a prison, where the main character, Driver, is finally being released after serving 10 long years behind bars. Before he leaves, a prison officer calls him over and says, "You've spent all these years here without causing any trouble. I hope you're leaving this darkness behind." The officer then asks if he has any questions. Driver calmly replies, "Where's the exit?" It's immediately clear that Driver isn't interested in small talk. He has only one thing on his mind. The moment he steps outside the prison gates, he starts running. His destination is a nearby junkyard, where dozens of wrecked vehicles sit abandoned. He pulls a cover off a restored muscle car, gets inside, and drives away. Inside the car are several documents, photographs, and a list of names. One photograph catches his attention. It's a picture of his murdered brother. At that moment, we learn Driver's true purpose. He isn't starting a new life after prison. He's hunting down every person responsible for his brother's death. His first stop is an office building in Bakersfield. Without hesitation, Driver walks inside, finds one of his targets, and shoots him dead. The terrified employees begin screaming as Driver calmly walks away. The entire murder is captured by the building's security cameras. Not long afterward, police officers arrive at the crime scene. A veteran detective and a police officer take charge of the investigation. Meanwhile, Driver meets the man who had secretly arranged the car and weapons for him. As the news reports the murder in Bakersfield, Driver pays the man for his help. Curious, the man asks, "How did you manage to hide so much money while you were in prison?" Driver gives him a cold look and replies, "Mind your own business." When Driver asks for the list of everyone involved in his brother's murder, the man demands even more money. He claims it took him 10 years to gather that information. Driver quickly loses his patience. Seeing the anger in Driver's eyes, the man immediately hands over the list without another argument. Elsewhere, we're introduced to another important character, a professional assassin known simply as Killer. He's first shown training intensely, making it obvious that he's highly skilled. It's also revealed that he has built a reputation for accepting impossible assignments just for the challenge. His girlfriend, Lily, encourages him to slow down and move on from this dangerous lifestyle. But before long, Killer receives a phone call. A client has a new contract for him. The caller explains that this target is different from the others, someone dangerous enough to make the job interesting. The client is terrified because the target is already coming after him. He wants the problem solved immediately. Moments later, Killer receives a photo of his target. It's Driver. Without wasting any time, Killer loads up his weapons, gets into his car, and heads out. At the same time, Driver tracks down the next name on his revenge list, an elderly man named Tyson. Driver parks near Tyson's apartment building and quietly heads inside. Killer also arrives in the area after tracking Driver's location. He follows him into the building from a distance. Meanwhile, Driver is overwhelmed by memories of his brother. The anger he's carried for 10 years finally explodes. The moment Tyson opens the door, Driver shoots him straight in the forehead. Just then, Killer finally gets a clear shot at Driver. He's seconds away from pulling the trigger, but a little girl suddenly walks into the line of fire. Not wanting an innocent child to get hurt, Driver quickly pushes her out of the way and immediately opens fire on Killer. The unexpected exchange forces Killer to take cover. Driver escapes before Killer can finish the job. Meanwhile, the detective shows the police officer an old case file connected to Driver's past. The footage reveals exactly what happened 10 years earlier. Driver and his brother had robbed a bank. After escaping, Driver picked up his brother in the getaway car, but before they could disappear, another criminal gang intercepted them. The gang demanded the stolen money. Driver begged them not to hurt his brother. His brother repeatedly warned him to stay quiet and reveal nothing. But fearing for his brother's life, Driver finally gave in. He told them the money was hidden beneath the kitchen floorboards. Even after getting the information they wanted, the gang showed no mercy. They slit his brother's throat right in front of him. Driver could do nothing except scream in horror as his brother died before his eyes. Tyson even mocked him by recording the entire scene and ordering Driver to smile for the camera. Filled with rage, Driver swore that he would hunt down every single person responsible. After reviewing the footage, the detective realizes something important. Driver wasn't betrayed by his own gang. He never had one. He was simply double-crossed and left alive while everyone else was killed. That old video contains the faces of every person Driver is now hunting. Just then, the detective and the police officer receive another call. Tyson has been murdered. Realizing the revenge has only just begun, they immediately rush to the crime scene. The story then reveals that two men got into a violent confrontation, and during the fight, one of them fired a gun. After the shooting, both men disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, Driver checks into a roadside motel. As he watches the morning news, he sees reports about the murder he committed the previous day. Without showing any emotion, he gets gets back into his car and drives to his next destination. He stops outside the house of a woman holding a baby. She's someone Driver has known for a very long time. He quietly walks inside with his gun, but his attention is drawn to a framed photograph sitting in the room. The woman immediately notices him. She grabs the frame, walks up to him, and slaps him across the face. Angrily, she asks, "Why are you here? Why did you stop me from visiting you in prison?" Then she tells him that she has moved on with her life and has started a new relationship. Hearing those words, Driver says nothing. He simply turns around and walks away. His next target is a man named Nixon, who spends most of his time at a strip club. Without wasting any time, Driver heads there. The club is crowded, and strict security checks everyone entering, forcing Driver to leave his gun behind. Once inside, he quietly picks up a sharp metal tool that looks like a screwdriver and makes his way toward Nixon. The moment Nixon sees him, he smirks. "I knew you'd come someday." But beneath that confidence is pure fear. Nixon quickly pulls out a knife, and a brutal fight breaks out. After a fierce struggle, Driver stabs him with the metal tool, leaving him critically wounded. Believing Nixon is finished, Driver walks away, but Nixon is still barely alive. Emergency responders rush him to the hospital. The following day, everyone's hunt continues. The professional assassin is still tracking Driver. The detective and the police officer are following the murder investigation, and Driver is determined to finish his revenge. The police officer calls the detective, who warns him that the remaining people on Driver's list already know they're being hunted. The officer then mentions that Nixon survived the attack and is undergoing emergency surgery. At the same time, Killer reaches the same conclusion. He realizes Driver won't leave unfinished business behind. If Nixon is still alive, Driver will definitely come back to finish the job, and he's right. Driver arrives at the hospital and heads straight for the special care unit where Nixon is being operated on. Doctors and nurses panic as Driver calmly pulls out his gun. Ignoring everyone's screams, he shoots Nixon dead, making sure his target can never escape again. The sound of gunfire throws the entire hospital into chaos. Patients, doctors, and visitors run for cover. The police officer hears the shots, grabs his weapon, and rushes after Driver. A fierce gunfight erupts inside the hospital. Bullets fly in every direction as the officer closes the distance, while Driver returns fire. Suddenly, Driver gets the upper hand. He points his gun directly at the officer. Realizing he has no chance, the officer slowly kneels down and closes his eyes, expecting to die. But Driver notices the police badge on his uniform. The officer isn't part of the people he's hunting, so Driver lowers his weapon and walks away. When the officer finally opens his eyes, Driver is already gone. Driver speeds away in his car, but someone else is already on his trail. Killer begins chasing him at high speed. The pursuit ends when both cars come to a stop. Driver fires first, shooting out one of Killer's tires, but Killer manages to land a shot of his own, grazing Driver's neck. Bleeding heavily, Driver jumps back into his car and escapes. Shortly afterward, Killer receives a phone call from the client who hired him. The client is growing impatient. He wants the job finished immediately. He even tells Killer to walk away if he can't complete it. Killer calmly replies, "I'll finish it." Despite the gunshot wound in his neck, Driver continues driving until he reaches his childhood home. He came there looking for his father. Instead, his mother tells him the heartbreaking truth. His father passed away 3 or 4 years ago. She treats the wound on Driver's neck, carefully stitching it, while asking when he was released from prison. "Just a couple of days ago," Driver replies. It's then revealed that Driver originally came home planning to kill his own father. His mother breaks down in tears. She tells him his father never wanted him dead and that he truly loved Driver's brother. She also admits that Driver was innocent and apologizes for never being able to protect him. Driver quietly responds, "My brother was the only person who ever cared about me." His mother asks him why he got involved in the robbery in the first place. Driver explains that he chose to help his brother after the original getaway driver abandoned them. His brother had stolen money from dangerous, corrupt people. "He needed me," Driver says. With nothing more to say, he quietly leaves. The next morning, Driver pulls his car over on the side of the road. He switches on the radio. A voice on a talk show says, "Hatred is like a chain around your neck." The speaker continues, "It drags you into darkness and traps you in a life you never wanted." As Driver listens in silence, those words begin to echo in his mind, hinting that his endless quest for revenge may be leading him down a path with no way back. The voice on the radio continues, "Hatred only leads you toward your own destruction. The only way to find peace is to let it go." Driver follows the broadcast until he reaches a church, where the speaker, Evangelist Alexander, is delivering a sermon. The moment Alexander sees Driver, he recognizes him. The two step outside to talk in private. Alexander finally reveals the truth about what happened years ago. He tells Driver that he wasn't one of the men who killed his brother. He says he was only standing guard at the door while the others carried out the crime. When Driver's brother had his throat slit, Alexander could only stand there in horror, shouting for them to stop. With regret in his voice, he admits that he can never undo what happened. He explains that he has spent the last 10 years dedicating his life to faith, hoping to make up for the sins of his past. Alexander looks at Driver and says, "I know revenge has consumed your heart, but it doesn't have to control your future." He urges Driver to let go of his hatred and choose forgiveness instead. Driver cuts him off. "Your sermon is over." Alexander quietly apologizes for his role in the past. Driver lowers his head and says, "I can't forgive." For a few moments, neither man speaks. Driver looks up and watches a flock of birds flying across the sky. Then he slowly raises his gun. Alexander closes his eyes and continues praying. A gunshot echoes through the air, but Driver deliberately fires into the sky. He chooses to spare Alexander's life. Before leaving, Driver tells him, "Go home to your family." For the first time since beginning his revenge, Driver lets someone live. Later, inside the church, Driver places his brother's photograph beside his pistol, as though finally saying goodbye. Just then, Killer arrives. He quietly points his gun at Driver. Outside the church, the police officer notices both Driver's car and Killer's car parked nearby. He immediately calls the detective and tells her both men are inside. Surprised, she tells him to wait until she arrives, but the officer refuses. "I want to handle this myself." He draws his gun and walks into the church. Inside, Killer looks at Driver and says, "I've been trying to kill you for days, but you never fight back." He tosses Driver's gun toward him. "Pick it up. Let's settle this properly." Driver doesn't even touch it. Instead, he calmly replies, "You've got your own problems." Killer prepares to shoot Driver himself. Then he reveals another shocking truth. "The person who hired me is still alive." Before he can say anything else, the police officer bursts into the church. "Drop the gun! Don't move!" Killer slowly sets his weapon down. Then, without warning, the officer fires. The bullet strikes Driver in the head. As Driver collapses, Killer stares at the officer in disbelief. "So, you're the one who hired me." The officer admits it. He explains that he only hired Killer because Driver survived every previous attempt. He also reveals another secret. The woman Driver had visited earlier, the one who was once close to his brother, is now his wife. She had been secretly feeding him information about Driver all along. Killer shakes his head in disgust. Driver had spared the officer's life at the hospital because he wasn't on the revenge list. Yet the officer had still chosen betrayal. Killer refuses to accept the payment. Before leaving, he tells the officer, "Don't ever contact me again." Meanwhile, the detective reviews Driver's revenge list one final time. As she studies the photographs, she suddenly notices something shocking. The police officer's picture is also on the list. She immediately realizes he has been hiding the truth. Turning to another officer, she urgently says, "Don't close this case." At the same time, the corrupt officer calls his family. Confident that everything is over, he tells them he'll be home in a couple of hours. Then, a gunshot rings out. Driver steps out from behind him. The officer is stunned. "How are you still alive?" Driver silently points to the metal plate implanted in the back of his head. The bullet had struck the metal instead of killing him. Realizing he is lost, the officer quietly admits, "I created my own hell." Driver doesn't hesitate. He fires one final shot, ending the officer's life. A short while later, the detective arrives and finds his body. The revenge is finally complete. Out of everyone involved in his brother's murder, only Evangelist Alexander survived. Not because he escaped, but because he sincerely asked for forgiveness. And Driver chose mercy over revenge. In the final scene, Driver stands by the ocean. He scatters his brother's ashes into the sea, finally giving him the farewell he never had. His promise has been fulfilled. His brother has been avenged. Elsewhere, Evangelist Alexander is shown preaching once again. This time, his message is simple. True strength doesn't come from revenge. It comes from forgiveness. And with that, the movie comes to an end.